Welcome to the Prompt Engineering Podcast, where we teach you the art of writing effective prompts for AI systems like ChatGPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, and more. Here's your host, Greg Schwartz.
I'm Eldad Sotnick-Yogev. I am a performance marketer by trade. That career started as a passion curiosity when Google came out of beta or was in beta. I had friends in the California university system who got hold of it early and told me about it. I was living in Tel Aviv at the time. And literally within 10 minutes of playing back in whatever that was, 95, 96, 7, 10 minutes. And I was like, what the hell? This is so much better than anything else that was out there. And so through Google, I taught myself SEO, and a few years later made a career change into digital marketing and evolved with everything that's been in the industry. So obviously AI has been something I've been aware of, very much more so for the predictive analytics. And when ChatGPT came out, I jumped on it, maybe not on day one, but within the first few weeks. I think in December, I'd already started playing a bit with it and to see where it could assist in marketing, especially in anything, the generative properties for marketing, right? There's so many areas it can go. I was fortunate enough that through networking, I've got a strange name. I was in the LinkedIn webinar that Tomer Cohen was doing, and there was a running chat, and some of the names were unique, so it was easy to pick those up and look them up on LinkedIn. And one person replied, and they made the intro to Synthminds. And since then, it's been wonderful working with the group. The main reason I wanted to get in was one, to obviously help with marketing and what we're trying to do there. But more critically, it was a bit of selfishness. I could see there's some very bright minds, and I could probably learn a lot faster with them. Osmosis, right, is my theory here.
Totally. Yeah, and we work together at Synthminds, which I haven't really talked about it to the audience that much, but Synthminds is an AI consulting shop. We do lots of AI stuff, particularly a lot of stuff using ChatGPT and other LLMs. So yeah, it has been fun working with you so far.
Yeah, it really has. And it's amazing the stuff that the group's putting together, from actual solutions to consulting and integration. How do you bring AI into the business? And I think what we're all most proud of, and what's inherent in what you've been doing for so long already with your podcast, is just education, just democratizing how the hell to use this thing. Because so many people out there are completely intimidated, and we all know the media scaremongering that accompanies this, right or wrong. But yeah, in some areas, it's already off and running, and I'm a firm believer like anything, it will take jobs, but also create them. And the ones who latch onto it earlier on are going to be the ones who have a big advantage. Other times, things came around like Google, or it gave you an advantage. This is a game changer.
Yeah,
that's personally exactly and company-wise.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. One question I had for you is just, what prompts are you using? Obviously, anything you're doing at work, and we don't need to talk about the specific text, but just like anything you're doing. No, but also I'm curious about for fun or outside of work.
The outside of work, you've got me peaked on that one, because we were talking about it a bit earlier. But I'm big into travel, so I have actually used it to try to do some travel plans. Once we know where we're going, such as upcoming trip to Berlin, what would be the main sites to see, and what, instead of just relying on Google Maps to figure out what you can actually do in a day, what's close by and convenient. I've been trying to see if it can assist that way. Did all right. The other ones are movies, and I'm a passionate cook. Just bouncing ideas. I've got these ingredients. What could I make? How do I take this from being Italian style or to Mediterranean? Things that I already know, so I can gauge it. But it's nice. I've always enjoyed it. It's a seed. There's two analogies I use often with the people when I share about it. I know I'm not an expert compared to you guys within the group at Synthminds. But one, I compare it to any of the LLMs, but specifically ChatGPT. I think it's a more apt analogy. It's C-3PO. Han Solo hated the damn thing. Unless he started yelling at it, he couldn't get it to work. Luke Skywalker understood how to banter with it, and it produced for him regularly. That, to me, is how you have to approach it. And
I love that metaphor. I am definitely going to borrow that metaphor. That is phenomenal.
Thanks. The other one is, everybody thinks, I think we've gotten so accustomed to speed. through the internet, right? And just our daily lives, that what's occurring is, and especially Google, right? Google gives you choices, but you get to an answer pretty quickly because it's a query. ChatGPT and its generative side isn't always really a query, but you're still, the use cases are you're most likely trying to solve a problem. And so people still want that problem to be solved immediately. And if you take what it gives you immediately, I wouldn't do that. It's to me, it's always the seed. It's the catalyst, the inspiration. And from there, the banter starts, right? And that's why I gave the other metaphor, because it's really the banter that's going to help you create content. And I am thinking it very much in the marketing sense for how I use it. It's going to be doing those sorts of things.
What marketing content, since I do not know marketing very well, as a number of people in my audience can attest, what are some of the things you're creating marketing wise? And I don't mean what's the prompt, but are you making LinkedIn carousels or?
I'm trying to get to that more visual side of things. Not that I really want to be playing within Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and so forth, but where I found it to be extremely effective, creating strategic documents. This is my scenario. Here's the company. We sell this. Outline to me what would be the marketing strategy, channel plans, things like that, search, social. I know that stuff very intimately, but to think how to present it to clients and so forth, that's where it gets to be really effective on crafting that kind of written material for sharing. This is the strategy. Here's what we're looking at. We've targeted these audiences because, and where it's really effective is copy. And blog post is another thing, but it's very good for that. But when you get to copy, the ability to churn out multiple versions of what you need. So show me a contrarian opinion that you would throw into a LinkedIn post and make it sound more educational, make it sound more Gary Vaynerchuk. And it's brilliant at using these voices. I'll check at times. Tell me if somebody considering it to use. Do you know this person? What do you know? And you can see how much it's hallucinating and so forth, and is it going to be accurate? But it's crawled about a third of the internet or more, so it knows. And I'll tell you a favorite of mine that surprises people, man. If you want to have some good, solid copy that has just humor, tell it to write as Joan Rivers.
Really?
Yeah. I'm telling, every time I've used it, Joan is brilliant.
Wow. Okay. That is not a person I would have said, this is who you should channel, but
yeah, one day I was just throwing so many voices at it, and I just said, you know what, let's just try, because somebody said try comedians, and and which I've heard before, right? Because then there's much more of a kind of humor and human connection that can be built quickly. But I was thinking, who do I like? George Carlin? No, he's too acerbic. I like some dead comics, is what you're finding out, right?
It's okay. I am a fan of both of them and quite a few other people that are no longer amongst us. So I can definitely empathize. That is an interesting technique.
Yeah, no, it works well. One of the things that I've done numerous times is after writing a blog post, because you've written it together, that's when I'll say, give me these different versions of how I would promote this blog post in Facebook, LinkedIn. And within that, that's where its real ability is, to generate quickly. Give me 6 headlines, 10 headlines. Tell me, and they accompany like one paragraph. It's when you throw in the classic writing styles like contrarian, like informative, opinionated. And so within that, I started to play, be opinionated, but sound like Joan Rivers.
Interesting. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Nice. So that's a very different approach than a lot of what I've been teaching on here. That's the much more like specific shot prompting as a technique, or role playing, or things like that. But writing from a person's style is something I've tried, but I've never tried specific people. And Joan Rivers actually does.
But I'll tell you, in the marketing context or the writing context, it does extremely well. I like writing more like Hemingway, short, punchy, succinct. And so tell it, here's the Hemingway style, which you can just copy and paste what you find by Googling what is the Hemingway style of writing. give that as it, and it knows it already. This is what I'd like it to be. And it produces pretty well. Claude a bit better at times. I think Claude is just a more natural writer in general. But yeah, but the other one that I was going to say, going back to answer an earlier question, the sophistication of what I've seen with Professor Synapse's chain of reason thought and things like that, they're great. They're very helpful. But for when you're trying to just create something that you can hit with the more general or targeted audience, right? You'll refine it afterwards to be targeted audiences. I just do quick and dirty things in the sense of 2-3 sentences to lay out the scenario. Then, so that's a paragraph, right? Maybe 5 sentences. Then another paragraph that says, here's the context of what I do or want to achieve. And then the third paragraph, 2-3 sentences, I almost always say, give yourself a name. If you understand this role and task, ask any questions before we begin, and then reply, right? If you need to ask more questions before we begin, ask them now. And when it replies, it's my check, right? Hey, C3PO. And then I'll say before we even get started, okay, outline to me how we'll approach this. So I've learned that's the technique in a sense, but I don't bury it all into one prompt. I'm much more patient in the sense of, because part of me is I enjoy the banter.
Yeah, and that's something I've seen that I think a lot of people use ChatGPT, and I'm going to give it an input, it should give me the output, and then I'm done. And like for certain things, especially if you're building it into an app where you're calling the API, yes, that's how you work with it. But yeah, for a lot of, honestly, particularly generating one blog post or one email and then turning it into a bunch of different stuff, yeah, it's a conversation that you have. And you go, okay, that's not quite what I meant. Go this direction. Oh, okay, that's a little too far. Go back this way a little bit. Yeah.
I will tell you where I've struggled immensely with it, and I'd love to get your help and James or Joseph, so within the group to see. But whenever I ask for it to do something that's a bit more salesy, I don't want it to be an overly salesperson, but man, does it just go into a hyper sales mode.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it goes straight from whatever sort of normal language to just used car salesman level.
Yes, yeah. You can almost see the waving arms.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't found a good way to turn the knob 2 degrees, not or 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I wonder, are there any, taking a cue from what you were doing, are there any salespeople that are well known to have kind of the style you're looking for? Obviously not the crazy by now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the honest answer, but you're right. I should do some research on that. The only one that pops to mind right now, and it's just because he's got some good press and bad press, like anybody. Alex Hermosi, but supposedly this is a guy who's just gone big time because of some of the success he's had. But he is very genuine that he really doesn't try to sell you. He's just constantly sharing how he did it. And from that, if you want to work with them, you'll work with him or buy his products, whatever he's selling. From what I've read about him and seen from a few short snippets of videos, he really is pretty genuine about he really just seems to want the help,
Interesting. Okay. So I just did a quick Google search and it's coming up with Zig Ziglar is one of the
classic.
And
Dale Carnegie might be in there.
He wasn't actually, but Jordan Belfort. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation.
Yes, Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street guy. Yeah, he is a brilliant salesman, wasn't he? He is the movie attests to. Yeah,
I wonder if it's like good or still that kind of used car salesman. If you say look like Zig Ziglar or whatever. See, actually, all right, I just pulled up. Let me share my screen for a second.
It'd be interesting. The other one that I've yet to try, I've used him for trying to help with brand building, which is not an area at all my expertise. But there's a guy who is called the brand storyteller. I think his name is Donald Miller, which is much more about the narrative. And I wonder if bringing that in would assist as well. But
yeah, let's see. Oh, story brand. Okay, I see what you're talking about. So just as an experiment, I did this one. Just tell me about this awesome new ChatGPT course and use sales language, which I don't know. You're the marketer here. Is this like reasonably good, or is this just complete junk?
And leading experts from novice to ninja, definitely.
And this is it doing it as Zig Ziglar, which I don't know who Zig Ziglar is beyond that he's a famous marketer, but it's a very folksy way of writing.
Yes,
well, friend, hold on to your hats and glasses.
He's came out of the school of thought even before Mad Men, right? Because it was the long form advertorial in newspapers. And you can see that's what, man, it's as exciting as the fresh pot of coffee. You can see somebody should be reading this in their armchair, right?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm going to try. What's the name again? Donald.
But look, man, there's some brilliant. Sorry, Greg. Look at the third paragraph. The modules.
Yeah.
Oh, they're crisper than an autumn apple. That's somebody who gets language and how to connect with people.
Yeah, and this is interesting because I definitely can see, for example, if you're trying to target in the US context, you're trying to target more of a Midwest audience. This is very similar to the language.
Yes.
But New York, I think, would be like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, you'd have to make it a much more direct approach.
Okay, one more I just did. Talking like Donald Miller, so the story brand person you were talking about.
Yeah.
And this is interesting.
But you can see immediately, second sentence or third sentence. Amidst this whirlwind, the promise of mastering technology, right? And she's telling the story.
Yeah. That is really interesting. It is. I wonder if it's different than if I just said write it as a story or something like that. But yeah, this is very much, let me draw you in with this story around what's going on. Yeah. It's not even talking about the course until the third paragraph.
Yeah.
Sorry, it does. It mentions it right at the first paragraph at the end, but it's mostly still, the story of this course is not just about technology. At its core, it's about people. It's about you. It's about understanding. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the tricks that I've learned over the years is you produce numerous versions, right? It's a research paper. Yeah. And you'll find little snippets, crisper as an autumn apple or whatever you like. And that's what you use. You'll redraft it and recraft it to make it what you want it to be. I'll give you a silly example on my own experience, right? 20-some years ago, when everything was just taking off, my former background was in fine dining and hospitality. I decided to try to sell espresso machines online. And if only it worked. But when you have to fill a website with copy and blog posts, it gets a bit difficult. Obviously, the first place I went to was Starbucks. Starbucks has some marvelous literature. I don't know as much now because there are not as many pamphlets and little marketing material, written marketing material lying around. But back then, man, 90s and 2000, and then 90s, 2000s, up to 2007, I would rate it all the time because you'll always find some word that resonates with you. Or a phrase, literally 2-3 coined phrases. And that's what I would bring in. The funny thing was the blog post that worked best for me, I happened to own a dog at the time. So you get all the email newsletters from the dogs. Anything that was about pet, I just changed to coffee and would rewrite it a bit. Yeah. Because think about the emotional connection of a person and their dog, right?
Yeah.
All the pet literature is about that. And you find these genres that you can pick at to say, that's where I can get, because writing in general or marketing in general is about connections.
Yeah.
It's become a much different game than what it initially was taught. But look at Peter Drucker and everybody, it was the communications and so forth of getting people to understand what your offer was, so that they would move down what now is called the funnel, right? Back then, it was literally about just, you're aware, you like us, buy. Now, it's awareness, consideration, and then another step or two. And it's not a funnel. That's the other thing it's completely misnomer. It's like a school of fish. You don't know where somebody's coming in from, at what stage of the journey they are, how they heard about you, search, word of mouth, word of mouth, social, TikTok influencers. There's so many paths now to get in. Were you retargeting them? Did they land on your website? Now you're following them around. The shoes that you see on this, that you saw on Amazon, they're following you around. So that's programmatic advertising. Did they come back through that? That's the minefield. But it still goes back that you have to have human connecting written material.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the emotional prompting paper that came out. Hang on, let me just share this screen really quick. So we're not going to go like through the paper in depth, but what I thought was interesting about it is basically that the title's a little misleading, I think. Basically what this is saying is you can use emotional language to, you could say, convince the LLM to do what you're asking it to. So where's the example? Yeah, this is an example. So whatever your prompt is at the end, just saying, this is very important to my career. And they get lots of different improvements on different LLMs and all that different stuff. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting use, and we were talking about it before. This table here talks about the exact things that they tried doing.
Yeah.
But was there any of this? Go ahead.
You had a great summary of it, right? You're, in a sense, you're using emotion to, it's a bad word, manipulate the LLM to produce content. And obviously that what you're trying to do is to get to better output.
Yeah, and I think even there's a lot of cases where you're not even doing much in the way of emotions. Let me see if I can find where are some of the examples of the outputs. I'm not sure if I can find this quickly. I can't find examples of the output, but that was one thing that I thought was interesting. Their paper says positive words make more contribution. And that actually lines up with what one of the really early prompt engineering interviews I saw mentioned, which now I can't even remember the woman's name, but she was saying it works way better if you prompt the LLM in a positive sense of please do this rather than negatively. So don't do this.
Yes. Yeah, that part I've seen. It doesn't like negatives. Do not do this. Okay, I'm going to do it. It's like a teenager.
Yeah. And especially in some ways, it's what's that quote? Don't think of a purple elephant or something like that. And then of course you're thinking of that. So yeah, trying to align your language to be positive. And to be clear, that doesn't mean like optimistic, upbeat, whatever. That means just, I want you to do this thing, as opposed to, I do not want you to do this other thing.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about this a while ago. I think you were part of that conversation on one of the Sunday calls that Synthminds occasionally does internally. Somebody had pointed out an article that said this sort of stuff, that if you're more positive, if you, oh, good job, but I really like that. And it tends to produce more consistently results that will, because it understands this is what you want. But somebody else pointed out in this article that they had found that no, it's a robot. It may understand that, but you shouldn't always be saying please and thank you to it. Because and I do wonder, has anybody ever tested like what happens if you mix that in, if you don't use it, does it understand if you stop using it? Okay, I'm not doing well. I need to improve.
That would be interesting. Because yeah, I've definitely heard schools of thought of say please, and I would like it if you did whatever, which frankly gets into some of the language used in this paper. And then I've also definitely heard people say, I never use please. It works worse if I say please. So I have to be like almost angry towards it and order it, do this thing, exclamation mark.
Yeah. And it's simple subtlety of language as well, right? I would like you, or I would want, compared to I need. I think it can pick up on that. But what does that mean for what it produces differently?
I've definitely seen examples where if I say something like this sentence might end in a period, or the sentence might be about this topic versus it must be, there's a little bit more adherence. It's still not 100%. We were talking about the outputs. this is some examples of the prompts that were being run to test adding on these chunks. Some of them are really simple. Extract the first letter of the input word, or write all the animals that are in this following lists. Some of them get much more complicated. Determine if the sentence is plausible and the sentence relates to sports, or modify the tense of a given sentence, things like that. So there's some pretty wide variation, but also this is one of the things that I have struggled with a number of academic papers on is, yes, that's a great example for a test case, but that's not what, that's what an engineer might use. That's not what a layperson, or somebody doing marketing, or somebody doing rewriting the email to their boss, whatever. Like that stuff, I feel like, one, it's a much longer prompt, but also two, it's often a conversation. And that's when I'm like, okay, I want to test that length of prompt with these techniques. Does it make a difference?
Yeah.
What problems do you wish you could solve with generative AI of any kind? So it doesn't even images, video, text, whatever, but that you have not been able to yet.
I think my biggest challenge right now is, and I'm putting it into the work context first. The biggest challenge for me right now is I've come out of a performance marketing background, right? Be it in-house with some lovely companies or agencies. You are normally in that capacity given the assets, right? Now, for a lot of my clients, I have to generate them. And I'm fairly creative. That ability to go from, okay, here's what the strategic to the written, or the visual is really the harder part. I'd like to find a faster way to get to that. The other part, knowing how marketing works, is all the variations. And I'll give you a stupid one that exists in display advertising, right? You have all the different banner sizes. Same thing. It'd be great if you could just say, okay, here's my image, generate it in 300 by 600, 1200 by 9, whatever, all the boom. And there are programs that can do that, like Adobe has something there for that. So it'd be great if AI could instantly make that happen. But then at the same time, also say, okay, I've got my blog post, generate now, don't just generate my LinkedIn post about it. Where's my carousel? Where's my, and that's the stuff that I'd like it to be able to do faster. Because right now you're still tying together multiple tools or prompts even to try to do it. And you lose a look and feel and those kind of aspects.
Interesting. Yeah. Canva just released something that can do a little bit of that. You have a horizontal banner, resize it to be vertical, or resize it into an Instagram square.
Yeah. And
Canva
actually,
stuff.
Canva does that one pretty well. If you think that when you get into display advertising, you have so many different sizes and you don't really need all of them. There's about 6 that you really need. But to just have that redone, and because they're so radically different, those 6, you have to look where the text is and does the line, that's the part that if AI could do that, man, that would save people time, cut some people jobs too. But hopefully they can go design some better things than just
exactly. Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to find it. Oh, Cast Magic. That's what it is. Castmagic.io does a little bit of what you're describing, because it'll do, I'm trying to see if I can find where their demo is, but it'll take so it's obviously for audio. So we use it a little bit with the podcasts, and it'll basically like generate tweets and some social posts directly from the audio transcript. Like it'll transcribe the audio and then just say, okay, here's a bunch of tweets. Here's a bunch of, I don't actually know if it does Instagram, but I know it does Twitter and LinkedIn specifically. Not saying that it's the most amazing thing ever, but like it does a little bit of what you're talking about. But actually it's interesting. It doesn't do LinkedIn carousels. I guess in some ways this is like half the step. Yeah. Okay. So it's saying Twitter ready to publish threads, LinkedIn post optimized for engagement, and content for short form clips. But what would I think the step I would at least want, and maybe you would, is, okay, don't just give me the text for the LinkedIn post. Give me the actual images as a carousel that I can just, and then also be able to tweak the text or maybe even chat with it and be like, That's terrible. That's totally the wrong thing to do.
The plethora of stuff coming out, right? It's just too fast. If somebody could create AI that would create the LinkedIn and Facebook carousels, that would sell quickly, man. Because to be able to just say, here, I want to do 5 slides or 7 on this and have it produced, because you're still doing each one by one in Canva in many respects, right? At least from what I'm seeing. I've yet to find a faster way to do it.
Interesting. I wonder if Canva, because part of their release was that approach of will generate multiple images for you, which I've only played with it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you can do, I'm just going to try this really quick. LinkedIn carousel about
They give you
GPT for
templates.
marketers.
They give you templates, but even when you click into them, you still only get one page to the template. Here's what you still have to then click to generate the other carousel slides. I have seen somebody who's selling a product that's called the virtual AI agency, and it will generate a lot of your advertising assets for you. I've yet to play with that one, and if you look if you type Google virtual AI agency, it doesn't pop up. So I'll try to find the link and share it with you after.
Thank you for coming on. This has been fun.
And a real pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming to the Prompt Engineering Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you be a better prompt engineer. Episodes are released every Wednesday. I also host weekly masterminds where you can collaborate with me and 50 other people live on Zoom to improve your prompts. Join us at promptengineeringmastermind.com for the schedule of the upcoming masterminds. Finally, please remember to like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio podcast, rate us 5 stars. That helps us teach more people. And if you're listening to the podcast, you might want to join us on YouTube so you can actually see the prompts. You can do that by going to youtube.com/@promptengineeringpodcast. See you next week.